Welcome to the Chad and Chong podcast, where we have conversations about production, performance, and everything in between. I'm Chad.
And I'm Chong.
And welcome to today's episode.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have with me today, or I should say I have with me today, not just Chad Manalo, not just Chad and Chong co-hosts, okay? I have the great and mighty Emmy's front of house engineer. I don't know, because that's the question I'm going to ask you. Chad, today we're going to talk about the Emmy experience that you had. First time, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to zoom in on this, by the way. We have here Chad holding the one and only Emmy Award.
Yeah, it was backstage. I'll tell you the
backstage.
story behind that.
Yeah.
Actually, the whole crew was at lunch, and I came in a little bit earlier. And since I'm never usually on stage during the actual show, I went back there and I was just checking out the stage. And then I saw the award just sitting there by the stage manager's desk. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a quick picture. And I think, somebody had to take that picture unless I set it up just on a table and took a selfie. But yeah, that is an actual Emmy award. And it was an actual one that they used during the show, the award show. And it weighed in at about 6.5 pounds, but it felt a lot heavier. So, yeah, that's the Emmy.
What'd you do for the Emmys, man?
Yeah, so I actually had the opportunity to run house sound, or what we call the front of house engineer, and that's running sound for everybody in the theater. And so if you guys don't know, obviously the Emmys is an award show that gives awards for television programs. And now, these days, too, they're actually including a lot of streaming things.
Right.
And it was actually a really cool experience because this particular Emmy Awards was the first is the first ever Children and Families Emmy Awards.
Okay.
So they have different categories of Emmy Awards. The most famous one is the Primetime Emmy Awards. There's the Daytime Emmy Awards. And then the Children and Families, which is, the category of children's shows and family shows.
Right.
It used to be part of the Daytime Emmy Awards. And I think it was the first time since 1970 that they had what's called like a breakaway awards ceremony. And they had to do that because there was so much content now being produced for children's and family that it just couldn't be contained to like a little segment during the Daytime Emmys. So I think, and you can look all this up, it says something like it was... it's obviously the fastest growing category, and I think for this particular awards ceremony, there was over 3,000 submissions.
Ooh.
So 3,000 different categories and submissions for children and family shows, both on TV and streaming. So It was actually a 2-night awards ceremony. And so it was a Saturday night and a Sunday night, and both of them lasted almost 3 hours. So you could just imagine like just how many awards were being given out that night, So, it was really cool. So I got to be part of the whole production of it, and I got my little lanyard here.
Nice.
You could zoom in there. It has a little production there, and then has a little Emmy in the back. Definitely going to frame that. There's actually a lot that goes into an actual TV production. And at least in the audio department, there's a couple different departments, but the main one is what we call broadcast audio.
Okay.
And that's, what we get to see on TV or streaming. And then there's the house audio, which is what I got to do for people in the audience. So this was everybody that was in the audience.
Sure,
so all the actors, the actresses, all the people who worked on the shows. Since I was kind of the house engineer, in some ways, I was actually kind of the head in a sense because I knew the house, so I knew the layout. So when it came to, routing and paths and how do we get feeds from the TV truck into the house and back and forth, and where do we set up the RF, which is wireless microphones, I kind of had to answer all of those questions, which again, to be honest, I've never done this in my life. I've never done anything like massively TV thing in my life.
Sure.
But I mean, I've been an audio engineer for over a decade, professionally, I guess, over a decade. And so like just all these experiences, I guess, just kind of helped me into trying to figure it out. But so on the broadcast side, the mixer for that was Ish Garcia. And I looked him up on IMDb, and his credits is just
Scrollable.
it's insane. It's scrollable, but you'll probably get tired. And I'm talking, he did everything, from like the last like 20 Emmy awards, like daytime, prime time, all that kind of stuff.
That's amazing.
The AMAs,
Yeah.
he did all the broadcast sound for AMAs. The Oscars, he did the Oscars. He did the Grammys. So this is like a heavyweight, giant in our industry. The whole production was directed by David Parks, which again, he's done the last 20 Emmys. He's done the ESPYs. He's done, remember back in the days, remember Live 8?
Sure.
It was like the worldwide concert, right? Where everybody was kind of putting together a concert in different continents of the world, all at the same time. And they were doing, the whole like, here live from Brazil and then live from Manila and then live from New York and live from LA. Yeah, so he was the producer for that, which I guess to this day, again, you can look this up, was the largest, or it's the most televised program show in history. So David Parks was, directing this Emmys. So, needless to say, I was in like some really, really heavyweight.
Yeah, man. Sounds like it for sure.
room. And so here I am, never having done this in my life. And, we're setting up on like, it's a week long build. But on the day before the rehearsal, so it was a Thursday, that's kind of when the TV truck came in. So the TV truck came in from Nashville, I think. And if you guys don't know, TV truck usually shows up to the venue, and that's kind of where all the cameras are plugged in. That's where the director sits in. That's where the broadcast audio is. That's where they get the satellite feed to go to the TV and internet and all that kind of stuff. And then they basically come to the house or the venue, which is where I was at. And they just start setting up, and where do we plug in this? How what's the path to get in here? What's the frequency ranges of wireless and all these kinds of things. And so for the audio department, there was like 3 or 4 different vendors. So there's literally one vendor that just handles just wireless mics, and that's their sole purpose and their only job. Wow. So they go, they come to me, Chad, where do I set up my mics? I'm like, okay, well, how many mics did you bring? What kind of, inputs do you need? They're like, okay, this. I'm okay. We have, space stage left. You can be over there. Okay, we need power. We need, 8 inputs, 16 inputs. I'm like, okay, I'll send it over here. And then they have, the broadcast truck come through, and they have, their audio assistants or the A2s. And they're going, okay, where can we set up where we can get those microphones, but then also send you guys things from the truck?
Right.
So, playback, everything that's basically that needs sound to be played back from video or things like that has to come from the truck, but it also has to come in to the house. So I go, okay, well, we can set up with this snake, and so I can get this feed. And then they go, okay, well, we need crowd mics, because you have to hear people clapping and reacting.
Yeah. Right.
And they literally mic the whole venue, from the balcony to the floor to the stage to the front. Okay, what's the path to get there? How do we get it into the truck? And so I'm literally like orchestrating all this, on Thursday morning, and I'm like, do these people know that I've never done this in my life?
Well, I'm assuming that's where you take kind of that, like, you act like you belong kind of title, right? Like, you have to. You're not going to act like you've never done it before in front of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. A little bit like that. And I'll say this, 100% transparency. There was a lot of terms that I did not understand. And there were just a lot of abbreviations that mean something different in another industry that they were just, calling it out. I'm just like, yeah, we can do that. And they're like, well, why would you plug it into that? I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know. Let's move it to that, and just literally, bro, like trying to figure it out on the go. And I literally have my phone and I'm just looking, I'm like, what is this? What is AT? What is SA? Yeah, the whole time. And I was like, what is this abbreviation, but in broadcast terms? You know? And it was just hilarious. That's I'm just, the whole time I'm like, yeah, we could do that here, do that there, So, that was pretty cool. But all in all, I think there was about close to 10 of us just in the audio department.
Okay.
And again, me being in charge of the house, I had my A2, but most of the time I was just, at the console.
Sure.
And whenever somebody had questions, Ish was at the truck, and then all the A2s were on stage, all the mics and RF people were on the stage. And so like during rehearsals and things like that, they were the ones who were actually miking up, all the presenters, the hosts, the actors, all that, and it's just my job to basically mix for the house. And so the first night we had JoJo Siwa was the host for that, and she's, if you know JoJo, she's just like super high energy, like just insane, like super loud. And then the next day we had Jack McBrayer, who was on 30 Rock, was hosting, and he was like way quiet. So we had both extremes. Both of the shows opened up with like a dance routine kind of a thing. So I had to set up like side fills for that to make sure that they could hear. And then there's all these intercoms everywhere so that the stage manager could talk to us, and then could also talk to the truck, and then the director is talking from the truck also to us, to the audience. And it was just a whole like ecosystem that I've never been a part of.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think it went really, really well. And
Great, man.
it was, everybody was happy. There was no real, huge hiccups.
That's good.
So for it being my first time ever like running an actual like TV production, I felt pretty good about it, and everything went pretty smooth. So hopefully there'll be more to come. But that was, man, that was crazy.
I saw Michelle, your girlfriend. She posted a screenshot of your name in the credits.
Yeah.
Did you get to see that after the fact?
Yeah, it was really crazy because the first night, actually, so I obviously sent the link to my parents and all that, and I was like, I don't know if my name's going to be on there or not. I don't know what they put in the credits, and they didn't. So I was like, oh, it's okay, like it's fine, But the next night, so I wasn't expecting it. But the next night, I guess, the show ended in the house, and we were starting to tear down, and I get a text from Michelle, and she goes, here's your name. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, is this real? And she screenshotted it. And, I watched it back, and it wasn't even a second. It was like 20 frames or something.
Wow.
But yeah, I saw my name under the audio department. And so that was really cool to see.
Yeah.
And I got to, the first people I shared it with was like my family and stuff,
for sure.
And I did share, just a little something on Instagram.
Right, I saw that, man.
Talking about it because, I'm full Filipino, and if you guys know, a lot of our parents or even grandparents are like first generation immigrants here to America, and so a lot of them, sacrificed a lot, like leaving their homeland and all that to provide for a better life for their family.
Sure.
And, naturally, a lot of them chose careers that would be stable and be a way for them to provide for their families. And so, especially, in my family, both my dad and mom's sides, I've got a ton of people in the medical field, nurses and doctors and all that. But I've always, just never was drawn to that. And even throughout college, like I never really finished a degree because I was kept battling, like, do I do this, but I really love doing this, and but throughout my whole university college journey, like my parents always just supported me. They just always wanted me to do what made me happy and what I loved. And so when I saw my name there, I was kind of taken back. I was still in the back, and I was just like, man, like I just want to share this with my parents because this isn't something that you see every day.
Right.
Especially being a Filipino. I don't know any other Filipino sound engineers, honestly, who's done something like this. And then on top of that, to be a part of like the first ever Children and Family Emmys is which is historic. It'll forever be the first ever in history. So to see my name there, really, I just wanted to make my parents proud.
Yeah.
And I hope that, seeing that last name on there, made them proud, and just, for them to understand like all their sacrifices and all that was, hopefully worth it. And it's like, Mom, I made it, in a sense, even though, we talked about in another episode of what making it is and success, and just being able to do what you love every day, waking up. But yeah, I mean, to see my name on there, and to share it. And, we just had Christmas, and, I show up to my family parties, and, everybody's talking about it.
That's amazing.
And I didn't tell anybody else, but, my parents were just so proud in sharing it with their siblings and the rest of the family. That to me was, why we do this, why I do this, and it felt really cool to do that.
I'm assuming throughout the 2 days that you were working for this show, there were some stressful moments. Can you pinpoint or name maybe one or two instances where it was the most stressful and how you went about it? How did you deal with like adversity or a tough situation?
Yeah, there definitely was. Obviously, going into it, like I said, like I've never done this, so just trying to keep up with the terms and, as simple as a wireless mic. Growing up in the church, we've always called it like a wireless mic, or a handheld mic, or even a cordless mic. In a professional world, they call it RF, which stands for radio frequency.
Right.
There's RF, and then there's a handheld mic. There's RF. There's belt packs. There's RF. There's lavs, and so there's a lot of terminology things. Even something like playback. If you grew up in the church and you do sound for the church, you know that usually we always either need sound from tracks or from Pro Presenter or from like an iMac to play back music or something.
Yeah.
So we'll label it computer or Pro Presenter, right? Well, in TV world, there's specific language for that. So, something like, I remember AT. There's AT playback. There's VT. There's VO, which is voiceover. There's announcement mic. There's DX, which is just dialogue, which is also used in film. That was kind of stressful in the beginning. And if I'm being honest, again, when the truck came through on Thursday, because I tried to prep as much as I can. Again, I was there from Sunday. I basically was there from Sunday to Sunday.
Yeah.
So the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I tried to prep what I could, got the house tuned and all that. And then Thursday, everybody just arrived at the same time at like 8 a.m. So I had, 8 to 10 audio guys looking at me. Where's this? Where's that? Where can we get, something like comms, which is, communication. They used my XLR lines for audio. And good thing, again, I prepped the house because, these days everything's digital, so it's Cat 5. But I still had a 24-channel analog snake sitting there that literally had no purpose. Like there was nothing was ever plugged into it. But the truck came, they needed to set up their comms, and they're like, do you have any ways to get to the house from the stage? And I was just like, analog? Like, yeah. I was like, well, XLR? Yeah. Well, I have a 24-channel snake. Cool. Where if we had taken that down the week before, they would have had to run a whole line.
Right.
So having been hit with that, the mics guys, okay, what RF are your house mics are? And I'm like, well, we killed them, so we're not using them. Okay. Where can I set up here? I need power. I don't know anything about power, but in the industry, there's power distros, there's 100 amps, there's 200 amps, there's 3-phase, 2-phase, all these, terms that I've always heard, especially touring, but I never really knew what it meant. So I'm going there. How much power do you need? Like, oh, just, a single da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, cool. Let me find out. Like literally, I'm going to my guys. Hey, where can the audio guys need power? Oh, how much power do you need? I don't know. They got to plug this in. That was stressful. Like the setting up. And again, like these guys have done so many of these things, like huge high profile things. And here I am like trying to direct them. But again, I just kind of went back through my experience and a lot of it was logic.
Sure.
Okay, well, why do they need this? They probably need to do this because of this. And, a lot of critical thinking and really, again, at the end of the day, there wasn't any huge snags. I will say this, though. The first night didn't sound as good as the second night. This is a big lesson that I learned. And basically, when you're running sound for the house, you always want everyone to hear everything. Mm-hmm. And, like even us here on this podcast, sometimes we'll talk close to the mic and sometimes we're further.
Yeah.
Well, when people are, accepting their awards, they're not always by the mic. So as a sound engineer, I will turn it up.
Yeah.
But I learned a very valuable lesson that there's a certain way that you're supposed to run house sound for TV productions.
Okay.
And the actual term for it is actually running TV PA. Basically, what you want to do is you want to set a certain limit and never, ever, ever, ever go above it. Ever. So, if somebody's too quiet and you can't hear it in the house, oh well, don't turn it up. If somebody's too loud, you better bring it all the way down.
Yeah.
Because what you don't realize is the priority of this show is TV. And when you have microphones like clip-on lavs and you have, 10, 12 crowd mics, if your volume of the house is inconsistent and it's going up and down and up and down, that translates into those mics picking it up. and it actually
Gotcha.
affects the TV sound. And so I didn't know that. And I was always like, oh, I can't hear them, so let me turn it up. But that was actually causing a lot of level imbalances for TV. So that was a really huge lesson that I had to learn. And by the second night, I was like, you know what? No matter what, I'm just gonna stick to this level
Yeah.
and never get any louder. And you could hear it back. Like the difference is like massive.
Was this something that you realized because somebody told you, or something that you rewatched like the first night and then determined, yeah, you know what, I'm making a mistake turning up and turning down the volume?
No, some of the truck guys kept saying, oh, it's too loud, it's too loud. And nobody directly told me how to do it or what to do.
Sure.
So I was like, what do you mean it's too loud? I'm like, then turn it down. I was like, if the host mic is too loud, turn it down. But I never took into account all the other mics
Gotcha.
that the broadcast needed and
Yeah.
had on. And so I didn't have time to listen back or watch back the
Yeah.
two shows. I watched it like days later. But it was just something in my head where I was just like, you know what? Why did the guys keep saying it was too loud, it was too loud? And so the next day, I actually made sure that I just kept it to that level. And at the end of the night, I just remember one of the guys just coming up to me and, I asked him, I was like, how did it sound? He's like, good. And that was it.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, I think I did well.
Stamp of approval.
Yeah.
Was it one of your best experiences?
I've thought about it a lot, right? And we talked about dreams and success and, seeing my name on TV and something historic and big. And I was having a conversation with somebody and they were like, wow, so it must have felt like really great to do this. And, at the end of the day, the actual show itself, and I don't want to downplay this at all, but I was literally just doing my job.
Yeah.
And I was just providing sound for the house. And, it's one of those things where I don't, talk a lot about my work on social media or something, because for me, it's like whether I'm working with an unknown independent artist who's just coming up or, major label kind of things, I always want to give my best.
Sure.
And I
100%.
always want to make sure that I'm giving them my best, my full attention and all that. And so, it's not like all of a sudden, oh, here's a TV thing, so I'm going to step my game up. I always make sure I'm consistent and I give whoever I'm working with, just the best quality that I can.
Right.
So the actual like running of the show itself, to be honest, like it didn't feel any crazier. Like it didn't feel like, oh man, this is like, such a dream come true, whatever. I'm definitely super, grateful because I know that not a lot of people can have this opportunity.
Right.
And so I definitely feel very lucky and I consider myself, really grateful for that opportunity. But, the actual experience itself, it was like a learning experience because it was my first. And it just kind of boosts my confidence now that I'm like, cool. Like, I've done tours, I've done bands, I've done this, and now I've done like a TV.
Yeah.
And it's like,
great.
cool. So when that opportunity comes again, I wouldn't be so stressed
Right.
like in that moment of
Right.
setting up and whatever. It's like, I've done this before and actually it went really well. And
Yeah.
it didn't like go down in flames, my first time. And it's not like my name is blacklisted or whatever. So, overall, like it was my job. And I thought I did really well. And, I hopefully I kind of continue to do well in what I do. But I also recognize that it is a pretty big deal. And, with that, like I wanted to share it with my family and friends.
How did you land this opportunity, by the way? And I don't think I've asked you that.
It's actually a crazy story because so I work for this theater in LA that I actually only have been working with for like less than 3 months. And, for those that don't know, again, like I wear many hats, but I was primarily a musician for the last decade. But I also dabbled in sound and, I was sound engineer for a couple bands and flew out and this and that. And I just decided, since COVID, I've been mostly here in the studio. And I just decided, you know what, I want to kind of just relearn live sound or, it's been like a decade. I don't know what the technologies are and whatever. And so I just applied for different places and, I got hired at this theater. And then, within like the third show, I kind of shot up the ranks and kind of became the house A1.
A1, yeah.
Yeah, or basically the resident house engineer. And it's actually a really crazy, cool story. We're both believers and we're both Christians. And I saw the Emmys on the calendar like a month before. And because it was a week-long build that required Sundays, I knew I couldn't do it. because I have church.
Yeah, yeah.
And I my church days are Tuesdays and Sundays, and so usually I can never take anything on those days. And I've learned long ago that if you value your faith, and you value God, and you trust God, and you put Him first, ultimately He's the one who's going to open the doors.
Yeah, yeah.
And it doesn't matter how hard you hustle and all these kinds of things. But basically, it was like the week before, and my boss asked me if I could do this show. And he said, like, he requested me specifically to be the house engineer for this. And I told him, I was like, my situation, as much as I would love to. And I probably honestly could have taken off church if I really wanted to, just find a sub. But something in me was just like, no, I've already committed, and it's the week before, and I'm like, I'm not going to back out in church. And it was that mentality of like, the Emmys isn't more important than church.
Yeah.
The Emmys isn't more important than God. And, and so I said, I can't do it. Or, if you want me to, I can't show up on Sunday. And Sunday is the big day. That's like the biggest show. And literally he came back at me like that night, and he said, what time are you done with church? Now, mind you, my church is all the way out in Camarillo, and I have to go all the way to downtown LA. I said, well, I'm done by 12. I probably won't get there till like 2 or something. And he said, it's okay. Yeah, I still want you. Show up when you can.
Man, that's crazy.
And so literally after church, I booked it. I grabbed some Del Taco. I went straight to the theater, and 2:00 I arrived there, and we ran our rehearsal at 2:30. And then the show just went on. So that's one of those things where it's like, what? I put God first, and and He kind of handled the rest, and so it was really cool.
That's amazing, man. When are you getting your own Emmy?
Hey, if it's in the cards, man, I'll take it.
It's pretty crazy, man. Honestly, because I've known you how many years now? 5-6 years,
Yeah.
And just the fact that you get to say that you worked for such a major award show like this is pretty awesome, man. These are our firsthand experiences that we both share with you guys. It's not something that we're making up. We're sharing it as we go through them.
Yeah.
And hopefully you guys are finding value in that. And we appreciate you guys supporting us. If you are watching us on YouTube, subscribe and follow us, and make sure you like and comment on this video. Share what you think about this episode and what you thought about what Chad shared. And if you're listening to us via Spotify or Apple Podcasts or even Amazon Music, make sure you also follow us there. Click the 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. That's super important for us to make sure we rank on top. And thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys for the next episode.